Alright guys, welcome back to the Team Barca channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 10 reasons why Josep Maria Bartomeu needs to leave. Why he has to go, he has to leave the club, but there are many different reasons and perspectives, to be honest, on why he must leave. But before we get into that, always remember to subscribe to the channel if it's something you like, or you can like the video. It really helps me out. Of course, this is a very new channel, so I'm just starting to build an audience, but it's always nice to see if somebody likes what you're doing. And I really just do it to share my opinions about the club I love, Barca, probably the club you love as well. So I'm always grateful for any help in that regard, likes, subscribes, and so on. So let's get into today's topic, why Bartomeu needs to leave the club, the 10 biggest reasons. So the most recent reason why he needs to leave the club obviously came after that historic 8-2 defeat to Bayern Munich in the Champions League. It really hurt as a Barca fan to view that game, but at least some good can come out of it. If it means that the board has to resign, that we can get through the vote and that he can leave the club, then definitely some good has come of it. Although a lot of negative things, and I think a lot of things we haven't even seen yet surrounding the club, like potentially Messi leaving next summer, might be one of the reasons, or just a part of the aftermath after such a terrible defeat. So that's definitely the first reason from my perspective. The second one is we've had 4 coaches and 5 different sporting directors under Bartomeu. That's absolutely incredible. Barca has a history of trusting in the managers, even when times gets rough. But we've seen Luis Enrique, Valverde, Setien for a short while, and now Ronald Koeman. 4 different managers with a very, very different style of play. They've all played at the club, or at least at a professional level. So that should at least be some consolation, but it really hasn't been. Of course, Luis Enrique had his difficulties in the beginning, but he did finally get the treble back for Barca, just like Pep Guardiola did, so he'll always be a legend at the club. Valverde, he won 2 championships, which is nice, of course, but the way we played under his rule wasn't really that great. The 4-4-2 still gives me nightmares. Setien, of course, a very different type of coach. I thought at the time when he came in, he might be able to bring some new ideas and do something different tactically. He tried the 3-5-2 at one point in the beginning, but quickly changed his ways as well. And I think in some ways he was forced to do that, either by the players or by the board. And now, of course, we have Ronald Koeman, who has had I wouldn't say a great start, but a pretty good start to his reign at Barca. I think players look much more fit than they used to. It seems like the fitness regime in general at the club is getting better and better. He's made a few transfers in and out of the club. Of course, we didn't get all the players we wanted, and definitely not the players that he wanted, like Eric Garcia and Depay. But I think in the future, we're going to address some of those issues. In terms of sporting directors, we've had 5 of them. Subarraeta, Robert Fernandez, Pep Segura, Eric Abidal, and now Ramon Planes. All those 5 sporting directors had the role of trying to bring in key players, bring in new types of players that suited the manager who was currently at the club, but it just completely lacks any sense to have 5 different sporting directors in such a short period of time. It really shows the lack of a project at the club. It's also something that Messi and other players have stated, that the club really needs a clear-cut plan for the future. It needs a new project to build around. Messi can't do everything by himself, definitely not going into the future, and maybe not even next season when he might not be here. And that's moving on to the next point, which is the Messi conflict. The conflict with Messi this summer has been absolutely terrible. He's the best player to ever play for our club. He's the best player, in my opinion, to ever play football, to ever put on a pair of football boots. And the way we treated him in terms of I totally accept you can't just let a player leave for free if he's under contract. But the entire way that the Messi situation was handled in the media is just terrible. It's the same goes for players like Luis Suarez, even Rakitic and Arturo Vidal, although he hasn't been at the club for that long. But I really think it says a lot when the captain of a club goes public and states that the project that he thought Barcelona would try to impose just isn't there and hasn't been there for quite a number of years. The same has been said of different players who left in the past, like Dani Alves, for instance, or like Neymar when he left. They also critiqued the board for the way they handled not just player sales and player incomings, but the entire project surrounding the club. And as a Barca fan, that's something you just cannot accept. Even as a player as well, you just cannot accept that a group of players who have done everything in their power to win trophies for the last 10, 15, even 20 years, if we go back that long, has given everything for the club, a player like Messi, of course, that we haven't had a clear-cut plan as to what we want to do in the future, but what we are trying to do currently as well. That's definitely, in my opinion, the biggest critique of Bartomeu, that he hasn't been able to show what the project of the club should be. The 4 next points as to why Bartomeu must resign, or at least have the vote and then be thrown out of the club, has to do with the way he's handled different structural problems at the club for the last few years. I think we all remember the Barca Gate story, that Barcelona is being investigated for employing a business that were to monitor social media and put on critical images and quotes and so on about current players and former players, which is just a massive lack of trust in the players, really trying to show that the reason why Barca is playing badly or we're losing games is not because of the board, but it's because of the players, which I think is a huge problem and a huge mistrust between the board and the players. But there's also the finances, and I think this isn't really talked enough about. The finances at Barca currently is absolutely terrible. So we are the biggest club in the world, or at least one of them, but we also have the biggest debt. So the club just registered for the 1920 season that they lost 97 million euros in their budget, as well as having the entire projected incoming being reduced by 25% to just a little less than 800 million euros. This is not just a huge loss for Barca, the club, but also for the city. People can't go to the stadiums. Of course, a lot of this has to do with the fact that the COVID-19 crisis is still ongoing, but at the same time, you just don't run up a massive amount of debt in this short period of time. A lot of it has come from extremely bad transfers. Players like Coutinho, Griezmann and Dembélé, who all came in on big transfers, those are obvious, but there's many other players who just haven't really worked out. I couldn't mention a player like Andre Gomez, for instance, who came in with a huge price tag, but it just was never really clear-cut what his role was going to be in the team. There are many other players down the line. We can mention a player like Paulinho, who did great for a season, but he did cost us 50 million euros. Of course, we got a lot of that money back when he left back to China, but it's examples like that where a player is brought in just to fill just a small gap in the team, instead of buying a young player or using an academy player to try and fill that role. And finally, 2 reasons why I think Bartomeu must resign. If we look at the Espai Barca project, so this is the project of innovating the stadium, expanding the number of people who can be at the stadium at the same time from around 98,000 to 105,000. That was projected as costing 600 million euros, but it's already risen to 1.25 billion euros, which of course is almost doubled, if not more, than the declared cost in the beginning. And the last point I want to make. Bartomeu has been at the club for several years. We've been successful under him, but in the last few years it hasn't really worked out. In my opinion, we've wasted some of the peak and best years of Messi by introducing players who hadn't fit the system, and therefore I think that the social peace in the city of Barcelona, among the fans, among the socios, amongst the board members and the players, pretty much everyone involved at the club would feel more at peace if he left. He's definitely been given enough chances already, and I think it would be best for everyone if he just left as soon as possible. You might say, on the other hand, that if he leaves currently, just before the El Clasico in a few weeks and before the season has really got started, we're not quite sure what that's going to turn into in terms of who's going to come in. But I do think that it's important for the players, especially players like Messi and other captains at the club, that people are actually taking action. People are listening to the critique, they're taking them serious, and we're going to try to do something new. Sometimes new ideas or new people being brought in can create some chaos or unwanted consequences, but I think that's a risk we are all willing to take. Alright guys, that was everything from this episode of the 10 reasons why Bartomeu must resign. I'm sure that there are a lot of other reasons that I haven't mentioned. When I came up with the list, it was just everything on top of my head, what I could really just get around within about 15 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe to my channel. I'll do these daily updates and uploads in terms of both news, but also player analysis, tactics when we get back from the international break. We're gonna do previews of games, then post-match performances, of course. But again, thank you for watching. It's nice to know that there are some people out there actually listening to what you have to say. You can always give this video a comment as well, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And there's just one final thing to say, and that's enjoy the Spanish guitar on the way out. Bye.